Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So today I want to talk to you about a sneaky exploit that has worked its way into the Reign of the Warlock expansion. This exploit is actually kind of crazy, and when I explain it to you in better detail, you'll get an understanding of why it might not be a good idea for you to purchase unidentified rings, amulets, or other specific items that might be susceptible to this particular exploit. Now, how does this exploit work? Well, the exploit involves the Chronicle. Now, when you go into the Chronicle will essentially capture every single item that you have found, or not rather every item that you've found, but every item that you've identified. And that's the really important distinction here, is that it doesn't add anything into the Chronicle unless you identify it, or unless someone else identifies the item in the game that you're in. Now, recently I found a sling ring, and when I found the sling ring, I kind of already knew that it was a sling ring, and I'm going to open up the video here, and I'm going to show you kind of what I mean about this. So here I am, and I got to unmute this so you guys can hear my nasty voice.
Elf in Darkwood killing random monsters.
I don't need to do all the quests, but if you could just give me the
So as you can see, I find a ring. This is the sling ring.
We got a Darnell.
I'll go back and do them.
Unique ring.
Yeah, that Darnell monster in there.
Unique ring. Eligible for Chronicle. Eligible.
So this is the thing about the Chronicle that potentially enables this exploit. Now, when an item is dropped, and I'm not sure if you guys were aware of this, but unique items, set items, rare items, whatever, they're all determined when they fall. So they have a set. You might have been under a mistaken impression at some point that like where you identify it and when you identify it and who identifies it is going to change the item in some way, shape, or form. But that's just not the case. The case has always been that the item was always determined underneath the surface. You just didn't know what it was. Now, the Chronicle is essentially reading the data for the item, and it's then telling you whether or not it's eligible for your Chronicle. Now, to give you an example of how this exploit could potentially work is, let's say you're running along and you find a ring. Well, you could then go into your Chronicle and you could say, okay, what rings have I found personally? And you go, okay, well, I found a Carrion Wind, I found a Bolcathos, I found a Dwarf Star Mantled, Nagel, Raven Frost, and a Sling Ring, right? So the only rings left on the list are things like a Soge, the Opal Vein, Nature's Peace, I think, and like I can't remember what the other one is. I'm sure you guys will tell me. But the moral of the story is what you would do is this. When you pick up an item, a unique item, or unique amulet, when you pick up a unique ring, when you pick up a unique jewel even, which would also work for rainbow facets, it would also work for these protector or guardian jewels. I mean, theoretically, I think each one has its own specific name, though, the guardian jewel. So it would just do the rainbow facets. But basically anything, even like a Geeds, for instance, where you have multiple uniques of the same item within that tier. Now, what you would do, and this is something that maybe they might have to patch at some point, but it definitely is an exploit that I want you guys aware of. And yeah, I'm also kind of telling you how to do the exploit. But there's no way for me to warn you about the exploit without also informing you that the exploit exists. And so I think it would be rather better the case that you guys know. So let me pull up a notepad here to gather my thoughts so I can explain this in better terms. So how would you perform this exploit? Well, the easiest way to do this would be to only identify, or rather only keep, rings that are already in your Chronicle. So one of the things that you want to do with this particular setup, and it probably wouldn't even take that many runs to do. You could probably just farm Andariel or Mephisto or something until you find a Nagel, a Mantled Heel, a Dwarf Star, a Carrion Wind, and so forth and so on. The much more rare rings like Bolcathos Wedding Band, Stone Ring of Jordan, Opal Vein, Sling Ring, they're not going to fall very often. The other thing is that once you have the rings, you don't have to even like worry about whether or not you're going to identify the wrong ring. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the rings. So only keep rings that are in your chronicle. And these are going to be the rings that you're going to exploit, right? So these are the exploit rings. And what you're going to do is you're going to look for rings that are not in your chronicle. Now, this does require a tiny bit of setup, but not really as much. And the rings that are not in your chronicle are going to be the rare rings, right? Now, the thing that you do here is you never identify the rare rings on your finder character. And this is very important. You never want to add the rare rings to your chronicle. But if you add a Bulk of Pat Cathos Wedding Band, if you add a Stone Ring of Jordan to your chronicle, then you will no longer be able to pick out those rings from the trash rings. So think about a situation where you have somebody selling unidentified unique rings or unidentified unique amulets or unidentified unique jewels or unidentified unique like charms, like Sunder charms or Geeds or whatever, right? Well, if you have a character, a set character, which wouldn't even be that hard to create, that has the easy to find rings, then you can use that character as a filter to pull out the good rings. You can then take all the bad rings in an unidentified lot, and then you can sell them to somebody who's gambling for a chance at an Opal Vein, or a chance at a Soj, or a chance at a Bulkathos. Now, this is something that's been pretty common for a long time, is selling unidentified items. However, there are some identified items like rings, amulets, grand charms, trying to think of the others, jewels, and so forth and so on. Even materials, like even things like sacred armor, Schaefer's hammer, which is the legendary mallet, and I'm sure I'm missing some. The Stormlash, which is the scourge. There are tons of items that are in this category that you could very easily set up a character for, where you could just filter out the items to know what they are in advance. Then you could take packs of them and you could sell them on like Tradery or JSP or various other methods, and you could essentially just make profit. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that as the person who's selling the rings, you're always going to be selling garbage rings. In fact, you could even say that it's kind of similar to, like online you can buy like these little bags of like gold dust or whatever, or like like in the mines where they get like the dirt and it's supposed to have like pay dirt or whatever, and you go and you pan it out. And a lot of the times what they'll do is they'll do like a seed and they'll put like one nugget in there, right? So that when you get it, you're excited, you got a nugget, but it's always worth less basically than what you paid for it. It's kind of the same thing going on here, is that they could potentially even put like a seed ring in there. Like they could just put all bad rings in a ring lot, and then they could maybe put like one halfway decent ring in the lot just to kind of like keep you interested in buying the next lot, and so forth and so on. The exploit is actually pretty easy to set up, in my opinion. In fact, I don't even think it would really even require much. Like I think you just play for a little while on a character, on a sorceress. You just farm a little bit. You start finding rings, and if you find a ring early on, like say for instance like a Bulkathos Wedding Band or something, or if you find like a specific ring, like a sling ring, really early on, then obviously you'd have to reset everything and you'd have to do it again with a new character. But the sling rings, the Bulkathos Wedding Bands, like the really good rings are so rare and so far and few between that most of the time I would imagine that it would be pretty easy to just do a farming run, find all the crappy rings, and then you would know that every single ring that you have from that point is a good ring. And the same thing goes for the amulets with things like Crescent Moon, Nokus, and Relic. Like Cat's Eye, Rising Sun, which are all amulets that are not really particularly that great. You're looking for things like High Lord's Wrath. You're looking for Maras, right? So, like, if you find all the crappy unique amulets and then you find like an amulet and it comes up and it says eligible for Chronicle, you get this one that's eligible for Chronicle, right? Well, then you know immediately, of course, that it is a good ring. right? And you don't include that in the pack. You don't sell that. In some ways, basically, what the Chronicle is doing is it's letting you peek behind the surface of what the item is, and essentially, what I'm telling you all, and to kind of like really wrap it up in a ribbon here, is that buying unidentified items is probably not a good idea with the Chronicle out. The Chronicle is basically going to allow people to pick out the good unidentified items from the pack, which, there may have even been an exploit at some point that allows you to see what an unidentified item is, like, for all I know. But this is or rather a cheat or like a program or something, but this is an exploit. The difference between a cheat program that would allow you to see the item is something third party that has to be installed. You have to know what you're doing. This is not that. This is literally just the Chronicle has the ability to see the item underneath the identification, and then by using the Chronicle and seeing what you found, you basically know what's there. Take, for instance, my current setup right now, right? So I've found a latent cold rupture, a latent crack of the heavens, a latent flame rift, and a Geats, right? So if one of the others drop, if a poison sunder, a magic sunder, or a physical sunder drop, it will say eligible for Chronicle for me, which means that I will know immediately that it is one of those. And I can just, take that out of the list, essentially. And the same goes in the opposite direction, is if I find a latent sunder and it is not eligible for Chronicle, then I know that it has to be the Cold, Crack, Flame Rift, or the Geats. It goes both ways. Like, you could literally find all the items and put them in your list to the point where you only have one or two, and when you see the eligible for Chronicle, you know immediately that it's that item. And it goes the other way as well. Like, if you have only one item in your Chronicle and you find an item and it doesn't say it's eligible for Chronicle, then you know that it is that specific item that you're looking for. The filter is actually kind of crazy in that you can pretty much, through like a meticulous pattern, identify exactly what an item is using multiple characters. For example, in my case, when I was online with a bunch of other people, we had other people in the game. So you can see it says GGM Bunny, Jim Bunny, GGM Leon Cena, GGM Quantum Leap, GGM, Who's TP, Darelock, and of course me, I'm on there, right? So like all I had to do to figure out exactly what ring that was just ask everybody what's in their Chronicle. And if I compared all the Chronicles with each other, I could have very easily been able to tell exactly what ring it was. Pinpoint it to the exact ring type even. Because in my Chronicle, I have quite a few rings missing. So you look at my Chronicle and you see I have quite a few rings missing in my Chronicle. But by cross-referencing it over multiple Chronicles, you can very easily say, okay, well, this guy has, he's found a Nature's Peace, so that's not it because it's eligible for him. This guy's found an Opal Vein, and it's still eligible for him, so it's not the Opal Vein. And by the time you're finished, you would know exactly what ring it is. Hopefully that you find this kind of stuff interesting. The Chronicle is definitely something that has added some odd changes into the game in terms of being able to see underneath of the surface of an item. Let me know what you guys think about this particular exploit. Let me know what you guys think about how they could potentially fix it. I don't potentially know how that they could fix it, to be honest. I was trying to think of it myself, and I guess the very existence of the Chronicle itself seems to lean toward this exploit, and I don't really know how you would fix it other than just removing the Chronicle, which I hope they don't do, because I do like the Chronicle. But I do think it's important to make these things, known so that people understand what's going on. I would just avoid purchasing any unidentified jewels, unidentified rings, unidentified amulets, because there's a very good chance that, well, and also grand charms, because there's a very good chance somebody's already picked out the good ones. Another interesting thing of note is maybe even to avoid buying unidentified torches. Now, this is for a different reason, and this is kind of a different exploit that's currently going on. So torches are +3 to a random class. However, most people right now, because of obviously a brand new class in 25 years, a lot of people are playing Warlock right now, and they want Warlock torches. Well, one of the current scams, which is really stupid, is people are going and finding Hellfire torches unidentified and then they're bringing them over to the Reign of the Warlock, which you can do by converting a non-Reign of the Warlock character to the Reign of the Warlock expansion, and then they're trading the unID'd torches. I don't really know why you would do it, but apparently it has been happening. And of course, a non-Reign of the Warlock torch cannot roll Warlock. It is impossible. So it can only roll between the original classes and not the new classes. So if you have any torches that come from essentially non-Reign of the Warlock, they're never going to roll Warlock, which is stupid. I don't know why they allow the conversion from like regular game ladder to Reign of the Warlock ladder. Like I certainly understand that like non-ladder, like Eternal Realm or whatever, like converting a character from that's perfectly fine. But they really shouldn't allow people to convert a ladder non-expansion character to the ladder expansion character. I think that's always been dumb, and it should have been something that they nipped in the bud ages ago. Anyway, that's pretty much it. As always, I'd appreciate you guys and gals watching. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And hope I didn't ramble on too much. I tend to do that. And keep rambling.